brother. Brother Cole Bay, would you please read the writs of our prophet?
Islam, Grand Sheikh. I rise, give perfect praise to our great God, Allah. Rise, give honors to our prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Rise, give honors to the forerunner, Marcus Messiah Garvey, the harbinger. Rise, give honors to all ills and bays. Arise, give honors to Mission 30. Rise, give honors to all Moslems on the planet. To the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America, Islam. This is instructions from your prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Be faithful unto your forefather, divine and national creed, that you will be blessed for your good deeds that you saw in the flesh. Allah is the one that judges the world, and his judgment is on now, but the weak can comprehend it not. The end of times are drawing near, so says Allah to his divine prophet, I, Noble Drew Ali. And that is why many hearts have turned to stone. Many have eyes to see, but cannot see, ears to hear, but cannot hear, lest they'll be confounded of their sins. These are the trying hours now, dear Moors, and every evil spirit is moving, and they are trying every weak mind to overthrow and drag out the true foundation that has been laid, and to cause confusion in the minds of the ones that do believe. But if you have the true love of Allah and the spirit of your forefathers, you fear not what you hear or see, but will sacrifice the utmost of your very life to protect your movement and your prophet. Watch your enemies, dear Moors. Your enemies are the ones that speak against your prophet and ridicule him to the very lowest, and the ones that speak against your divine and national principles of your temples. Act accordingly, and Allah will bless you for your good work. Peace, your divine prophet, Noble Drew Ali. To be proclaimed in every meeting. Islam, I am glad to know I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. There's a host of jealousy about me and the movement now by the same people of our side of the nation that claim that I was a joke and unreal. But now, since they found out from the government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens, they are working every scheme that they can to disqualify me so they may take charge of the situation. I have notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through the faithful Moors that attribute to the movement and uplifting funds. The ones that pay their divine respects to me and the movement will be remembered. That is why I'm calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance, and I need it badly. Never before have I needed finance so badly as I do at present, so I can shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world will now recognize the movement without I, the prophet, being head. It has been proven by my works which I have performed in the past few years. Prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Prophet warns all Muslims to be read in every meeting. I hereby inform all members they must end all radical speeches while at work, in their homes, and on the streets. We are for peace and not destruction. Stop flashing your cards at Europeans. It causes confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be a severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings towards the temple or the prophet or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement will receive their rewards from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors will and must obey the law laid down to them by their prophet. If they lose confidence in their prophet, they should turn in their card and button, cease wearing their turban and fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. This is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet Noble Drew Ali. And if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet, therefore, is sending out a divine plea to all Moorish Americans that do their part in protecting the prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. Peace. Noble Drew Ali. Islam, Islam, Islamism. Happy Sunday, Muslims.
Islam and gratitude, brother. Sister Lachey L, would you please read our additional laws?
Islam. I rise to give perfect praise to the great Father God Allah, honors to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, honors to the forerunner Marcus Messiah Garvey, honors to all Muslims all around the world. Questionnaire, and additional laws for Moorish Americans by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Act 1, Grand Sheikhs and governors and heads of all temple, all business, each said temple must be approved by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali before acted upon by any members, let it be finance, property, or any line of life that will cause the members to sacrifice, finance, etc., that will cause the support of any group of members. Any former officer that violates these laws is subject to be removed from his office under a heavy restriction, etc., by the Prophet or the Grand Sheikh. Act 2, all members are to attend their adept meetings and their public meetings promptly. If a member is found standing around on their meeting period, should be fined 50 cents on the first case, and on the second, he will be fined $1, which will go on your emergency fund. If member is working, his monthly dues must be paid, and if he has money in the bank, he must subscribe for as much as he is able to the Moorish uplifting funds, because it takes finance to uplift the nation. Act 3, it is the lawful and divine duty of every good member, if he is able in finance, to aid me in saving the nation. And if he does not, he is an enemy to the cause of uplifting his own people, and justice must catch you. Let it be he or she according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, as I have the power invested in my hands, then I will have to enforce the law in order to save the nation. Act 4, all members while up making a public speech must not use any assertion against the American flag or speak radical against the church or any member of any organized group, because we are to teach love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Act 5, all members must promptly attend their meetings and send their children to Sunday school, and the teacher must confirm himself to the questionnaire, and let every member exercise his 5 senses who is able to do so, because out of your Sunday school comes the guiders of the nation. Act 6, with us, all members must proclaim their nationality, and we're teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are a part and a parcel of this said government, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folks, Black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now, and all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Drew Ali, the prophet, to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Act 7, all members must promptly attend their meetings and become a part and a partial of all uplifting acts of the Moorish Science Temple. Members must pay their dues and keep in line with all necessities of the Moorish Science Temple. Then you're entitled to the name of faithful. Husband, you must support your wife and children. Wife, you must obey your husband and take care of your children and look after the duties of your household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother and be industrious and become a part of the uplifting of fallen humanity. All Moorish Americans must keep their hearts and mind pure with love and their bodies clean with water. This divine covenant is from your holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, through the guidance of his Father God, Allah. Peace and blessings.
All right, it's Islam, sister, and gratitude. All right, we're gonna read the divine warning, but before we do that, just want to reiterate why we do this. All right, so if anybody's asking or wondering, like, why do we read this stuff every time? No, it's boring. Why do we keep doing this over and over again? So there's a method to this. I'm sure everybody here went to school before, and what do we learn about in school? Right, we learn about the importance of 1776. We learn about the founding fathers. We learn about all of these different things. Nobody tells us that we have our own independence, like our own Declaration of Independence. Nobody tells us that we have our own laws, about our own dates, just like all of the holidays and things like of that nature. They don't know that we have our own dates that signify something important, right? And so that's why we have to come in and learn it and it has to be almost etched into our heads, just like when you etch something into stone. So they can't be erased and forgotten. That's also why the prophet said, out of our Sunday schools will come the what? The guiders of the nation. And in order to properly guide something, we have to know where it's going. We have to know what direction the movement, the Moorish Divine National Movement, is supposed to go in, because nobody else is going to know it. Nobody else is going to come and save us. Nobody else is going to come and do the correct thing. Even some of our brothers and sisters that know that they're Moors aren't going to do the right thing and aren't going to lead it in the right direction. So it's on us, literally. The people here listening, it's on us. So we have to know the direction clearly in our heads, what direction is supposed to go in. Because out from the Sunday school will come the guiders of the nation. So we're going to make it happen and we're going to guide it. And in order to guide the ship, you have to have the compass. You have to know where it's going. You can't be heading towards Asia, but you're supposed to be going to South America, right? You can't do that. You have to know where you're going ahead of time and how to get there. At least the direction to go in and get there. So it's important for us to come in and do this. That's why we read this stuff. Friday, we were reading over the general laws, stuff that we don't even really hear that often or see that often, maybe even never seen it before. This is why we go over it. No one else is going to give it to you. Okay? So just in case anybody asks, this is why. It's something that the prophet came and set up. And like he said, he built this movement on the backs of scorpions and snakes. Okay? And so some of our own people, either out of ignorance or out of having their own motives, aren't even trying to do the right thing. So it's on us to do it. But we have to know where it's supposed to go in order to get it there. And on that note, let's read the divine warning. Islam, Moors. A divine warning by the prophet for the nations. The citizens of all free national governments, according to their national constitution, are all of one family bearing one free national name. Those who fail to recognize the free national name of their constitutional government are classed as undesirables and are subject to all inferior names and abuses and mistreatments that the citizens care to bestow upon them. And it is a sin for any group of people to violate the national constitutional laws of a free national government and cling to the names and the principles that delude to slavery. I, the prophet, was prepared by the great God Allah to warn my people to repent from their sinful ways and go back to the state of mind to their forefathers' divine and national principles, that they will be law abiders and receive their divine rights as citizens according to the free national constitution that was prepared for all free national beings. They are to claim their own free national name and religion. There is but one issue for them to be recognized by this government and of the earth, and it comes only through the connection of the Moorish Divine National Movement, which is incorporated in this government and recognized by all other nations of the world. And through it, they and their children can receive their divine rights unmolested by other citizens, that they can cast a free national ballot at the polls under the free national constitution of the state's government and not under a granted privilege, as has been the existing condition for many generations. You who doubt whether I, the prophet, and my principles are right for the redemption of my people, go to those that know the law in the city hall and among the officials in your government and ask them under an intelligent tone, and they will be glad to render you a favorable reply, for they are glad to see me bring you out of darkness into light. Money doesn't make the man. It is free national standards and power that makes a man and a nation. The wealth of all national governments, gold and silver, and commerce belong to the citizens alone, and without your national citizenship by name and principles, you have no true wealth. And I am hereby calling on all true citizens that stand for a free national free government and the enforcement of the Constitution to help me in my great missionary work, because I need all support from all true American citizens of the United States of America. Help me to save my people who have fallen from the constitutional laws of the government. I am depending on your support to get them back to the constitutional fold again, that they will learn to love instead of hate, and will live according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, supporting our free national constitution of the United States of America. I love my people and I desire their unity and mine back to their own free national and divine standard, because day by day they have been violating the national and constitutional laws of their government by claiming names and principles that are unconstitutional. If Italians, Greeks, English, Chinese, Japanese, Turks, and Arabians are forced to proclaim their free national name and religion for the constitutional government of the United States of America, it is no more than right that the law should be enforced upon all other American citizens alike in all other governments when a man is born and raised there and asks for his national descent name, and if he fails to give it, he is misused, imprisoned, or exiled. Any group of people that fail to answer up to the constitutional standards of law by name, and principles, because to be a citizen of any government, you must claim your national descent name because they place their trust upon issue and names formed by their forefathers. The word Negro alludes in the Latin language to the word nigger, the same as the word colored alludes to anything that is painted, varnished, and dyed. Every nation must bear a national descent name of their forefathers, because honoring thy fathers and thy mothers, your days will be lengthened upon this earth. These names have never been recognized by any true American citizens of this day. Through your free national name, you are known and recognized by all nations of the earth that are recognized by said national government in which they live. The 14th and 15th Amendments brought the North and South in unit, placing the Southerners who were at that time without power with the constitutional body of power. And at that time, 1865, the free national constitutional law that was enforced since 1774 declared all men equal and free. And if all men are declared by the free national constitution to be free and equal, since that constitution has never been changed, there is no need for the application of the 14th and 15th Amendments for the salvation of our people and citizens. So there isn't but one supreme issue for my people to use to redeem that which was lost, and that is through the above statements. Then the lion and the lamb can lie down together in yonder hills, and neither will be harmed, because love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice will be reigning in this land. In those days, the United States will be one of the greatest civilized and prosperous governments of the world. But if the above principles are not carried out by the citizens and my people in this government, the worst is yet to come, because the great God of the universe is not pleased with the works that are being performed in North America by my people, and this great sin must be removed from the land to save it from enormous earthquakes, diseases, etc. And I, the prophet, do herein believe that this administration of the government, being more wisely prepared by more genius citizens that believe in their free national constitution and laws, and through the help of such classes of citizens, I, the prophet, truly believe that my people will find the true and divine way of their forefathers and learn to stop serving carnal customs and merely ideas of man that have never done them any good, but have always harmed them. So I, the prophet, am hereby calling aloud with the divine plea to all true American citizens to help me to remove this great sin which has been committed and is being practiced by my people in the United States of America, because they know it is not the true and divine way. And without understanding, they have fallen from the true light into utter darkness of sin, and there's not a nation on earth today that will recognize them socially, religiously, politically, or economically, etc., in their present condition of their endeavorment in which they themselves try to force upon a civilized world. They will not refrain from their sinful ways of action, and their deeds have brought Jim Crowism, segregation, and everything that brings harm to human beings on earth. And they fought the Southerner for all these great misuses. But I have traveled in the South and have examined conditions there, and it is the works of my people continuously practicing the things which bring dishonor, disgrace, and disrespect to any nation that lives the life. And I'm hereby calling on all true American citizens for moral support and finance to help me in my great missionary work to bring my people out of darkness into marvelous light. From the prophet. All right, Islam. All right, peace, Moors. We're going to be in our Quran questionnaire going over questions 11 through 20. And as we do that, I ask that all Moors please look over the questions with us. If you don't have a question there, you can just look on the screen. I also ask that we all read the question and answer out loud. Hang on one second. All right, Moors, I don't want us just to memorize these questions. I mean, it's just good if we can commit it to memory, but I don't want us to just memorize it. So we will discuss it. You know, if anybody has any questions or anything you want to talk more in depth about what's really being discussed here, we can do that. But I do want us all to say it out loud so that we know this, so that we will actually have all of these questions down, all 101 of them in our heads. So if you could, everyone, please, whether you have a physical book or just looking on the screen, please read these out loud with us, the question and the answer, starting with number 11. All right, Islam Moors. Where was Noble Drew Ali born?
In the state of North Carolina,
1886. Number 12, what is his nationality? Moorish
American.
13. What
is
your nationality? Moorish American. 14. Why are we Moorish American? Because we are descendants of Moroccans born in America. 15. For what purpose was the Moorish Science Temple of America founded? For the upliftment of fallen humanity. All right, question 16. How did the prophet begin to uplift Moorish Americans? By teaching them to be themselves. 17. What is our religion? Islam is. 18. Is that a new or is that an old time religion? Old time religion. 19. What kind of flag is Moorish? It is a red flag with a 5-pointed green star in the center. 20. What do the 5 points represent? Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Islam. All right, so let's go on back up to number 11. Where was Noble Drew Ali born? All right. Does anybody have anything to say on that? Why is that in there? Why is that important? Why do you think that's important? All right. The previous question was, where was the Moorish Science Temple of America founded? It was founded in Newark, New Jersey, or Newark, New Jerusalem. That's where the idea of the Moorish Science Temple of America evolved. That's where it was established. Then we're given the date and the location for where Noble Drew Ali was born. All right, and that's significant. And from our perspective, that's significant for a couple of reasons. Okay. Can anybody add to that? Why that's important? Prophet coming from North Carolina, 1886. I'll say one thing, that date, 1886, if we just look up what was going on in North Carolina around the turn of the century, late 1800s, early 1900s, you're going to see there was a lot of race riots. You had entire towns. You had one of the worst ones in this country that took place in Wilmington, North Carolina, where it was pretty much a town. It's still there, but at that point in time, it was controlled by our people. They came under attack. You had other people who were indigenous, the Lumbee Indians, who everybody knew that they were so-called Negroes. They were Asiatic, in other words. They actually got into a fight with the KKK. They thought they were going to run them out of town. And when they came in, the Lumbee Indians came in there with rifles and they ran the KKK up out of there. This was in North Carolina. So the prophet came in during this time. All this is going on. Islam, Brother Jackson Bey. I yield the floor.
Islam, I just wanted to add, coming from that part of the country at that time, he would be, I know, would be well aware of Moors, just for the simple fact, the Moor Sundry Act, I think that happened down there in one of the Carolinas. I think it's, and then also the Negro Act, he'd be well aware of the Negro Act of South Carolina. And then also he'd be well aware of the Turks that was down there. It was the population that was identifying themselves as Turks. Yeah, so that's why I wanted to add. That's why it would have been important. That's why it's important to understand that he was born in the state of North Carolina. Islam, peace and love.
Islam, brother, gratitude. So that's important. Like the brother said, the state of North Carolina, and in that time frame. So there was a lot, we had the Black codes, we had all types of things that were going on to oppress our people. So there's no question about whether or not the prophet could relate to what we were going through, because things might have even been a little bit worse. Speaking to my grandfather's from Tennessee. He saw people hanging from trees, our people. And he's like, I talked to him about that stuff. He could never forget it. It's etched in his mind, for the rest of his life. He never forgot about that stuff. He wasn't walking around angry or nothing, but he never forgot it. And so there's a chance, things like this were going on. So yes, he understood what we were going through, right? Born in 1886, North Carolina, shouldn't be no question about it. But then also the fact that he's from North Carolina, when we look at the Quran, as revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, in Surah 14, verse 4, it says, we sent a messenger except to teach. It says, we sent not a messenger except to teach in the language of his own people in order to make things clear to them. Now Allah leaves straying those whom he pleases and guides whom he pleases. And he is exalted in power, full of wisdom. So this is letting you know, we sent not a messenger. A messenger is a Rasul. This is the lawbringer. This is the highest form of a prophet, right? So we sent a Rasul, a messenger to every people in speaking their own language in order to make things clear to them. And then Allah leads straying those whom he pleases and guides whom he pleases. So it doesn't matter if people think that we deserve a prophet or not. We don't need anybody else to test our prophet or to give us the thumbs up. Okay, you guys can have a prophet. Now, y'all can kick rocks, because right here it says Allah leads straying those whom he pleases and guides those whom he pleases, right? So nobody else has the say so. Nobody else has the criteria. Allah gave it. They sent a messenger to the people to teach in the language of their own people. And that's actually in the Quran 3 times. You may want to write these down. It's in Surah 10, verse 44. And it says, and for every ummah, for every community, every nation, an ummah is a community or a nation. So for every ummah, there is a messenger. When their messenger comes, the matter will be judged between them with justice, and they will not be wrong. That's Surah 10, Ayah 47. And then also, as I said before, 14:4. We sent not a messenger except to teach in the language of his own people in order to make things clear to them. 14:4. And then also write down Surah 16, verse 36. So 3 times, 16:36, it says, for assuredly sent among it says, for we assuredly sent amongst every people a messenger with the command, serve Allah and eschew evil. Of the people were some whom Allah guided and some on whom error became inevitably established. So travel through the earth and see what was the end of those who denied the truth. So that's in there again. we assuredly sent amongst every people a messenger. All right, 3 times. Nobody else has to say so on that. Allah set the criteria. Want to make sure that's understood. So I hopefully you wrote those verses down. Let's move on. What was his nationality? Nationality means a people linked by common descent from an accepted ancestor and sharing a common religion, language, a common land, a common history, culture, and way of life. So all people have a nationality, and it's supposed to connect you to a specific area and then a specific geographical location and ancestor as well, right? Somebody is Turkish American. I used to live in Brazil, and like a lot of people don't know this, but Brazil has the largest amount of Japanese people outside of Japan. Nobody knows that unless you're in Brazil. You know there's a lot of Japanese people there, right? But nobody else would think of that. So there's a bunch of Japanese people there, and they're Japanese Brazilian. All right, just sharing that because they have a common nationality, common heritage. And it automatically links them back to their ancestors. They're from the land of the rising sun. That's why when you see the flag of Japan, it's all white with the red dot. They're from the land of the rising sun. And they have a history and a culture and a language and all of that. They're civilized people. And so the prophet tied us back into our ancestors, right? So what he is, we are as well. So that those two are tied together, right? 12 and 13. He's Moorish American, and so are we. And on the record here, since they stripped us of our nationality, the prophet created something new to tie us back into our ancestry. So he was the first recognized Moorish American, and he deemed us a nation. He placed the American flag around a boy and the Moorish flag around a young girl. And actually these two children, I believe, were 12 years old, and they were the youngest adepts that had ever been made. He brought them through the chamber, put the flag on them, and announced us to the world with the parade. Okay, so going back in 14, why are we Moorish Americans? Because we are the descendants of Moroccans and born in America. It's just the simplest way to explain it. Simplicity is beautiful in a lot of ways. Like this simplicity is beautiful. You have to be able to you have to be able to explain this to children, right? And then just to make it simple and plain, we don't need to go into this long drawn out, because this used to be connected and all of this was no, you can't tell that to everybody. Everybody's not even ready for this discussion. Some of us won't even be ready for this discussion. Like some people that, come in, they're not ready for all that. It just needs to be understood and plain and simple, right? Some of these discussions we can have offline about how, what do we really mean by Moroccans, right? How far back does this go? But we just need to keep it plain and simple, right? So why are we Moorish Americans? Because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. And it can be used in a restrictive sense, just saying Morocco, the modern day nation state of Morocco. But even that is subject to change and fluidity, because right now, Morocco is trying to expand its borders. They're saying that Western Sahara, all of this land is theirs as well, because traditionally it used to be theirs. And so what happens if the borders of the state of Morocco expand, and now they get a whole bunch of other people who are now Moroccan as well, right? So that changes, but that's the restrictive sense. You following me? So we're not looking at it in the restrictive sense, because we're looking at, this is what you can explain to everybody. The fact that all of these different Asiatic people in Northwestern and Southwestern Africa at one point were Moors. And so if you're looking at the common history that they teach us, that we all were brought over here on slave ships, all of these people, the Wolof people, the Yoruba people, these different tribes, the Shanti, the Fulani, Mandingos, everybody heard about some of these tribes before, right? So these various tribes from different parts of Africa, Northwestern, Southwestern Africa, all of these people, all of these different people at one point in time were Moors or had Moorish kingdoms. And this is why even when you go to these areas in this day and time, you'll see some of these people wearing a fez. Their fez may be red, it may be green, but they're wearing it. They're still keeping some of those traditions going. And if they truly understand their history, they know that, okay, yeah, at one point in time, we considered ourselves Moors as well. Now their identity and everything may have changed over time, but just from that perspective, right? And then that's something that everybody can understand because that's what's taught to us. That's the common narrative that we're all brought over via the slave trade. So the majority of those, and they'll even tell you that in, well, they've been saying this for years, that the majority or a large amount of the people who were enslaved were Islamic, were practicing Islam. There was a slave revolt in South America in a state called Bahia. It's in Brazil. The slave revolt was led by people who were of Mandingo descent and maybe another tribe as well. They linked together. They were Islamic and they communicated across the state and they formed their own little villages or cities and they revolted. All right, and it was an Islamic slave revolt. It's actually pretty popular in history. And so I'm just saying this to say that from that narrative, most of those people that were brought from Africa were Islamic, or maybe even some of them were Hebrews. But regardless of how you look at it, they were Moors. And then some of the other stuff that we can get into, it might be going too far, too deep. But no matter how you paint it, our ancestors are Moors. Now, how did the prophet begin to uplift the Moorish Americans? By teaching us to be ourselves, by teaching them to be themselves. Right? And this is important because we're under a program that stripped us from this connection to the creators of civilization. So right away, that takes your pride away. You have something to be proud of. Something that should make us push harder, work a little harder, try a little bit more, right? We shouldn't be out here selling drugs and robbing and doing things like that because we come from greatness. But the image that's been painted of us now makes that acceptable when nobody else accepts that. Everybody has that element in their society, but it's not held up. And people, well, maybe I shouldn't say this, but people don't celebrate the criminal element. They don't celebrate it, right? They're not like in China, they're not gonna be holding up t-shirts and wearing shirts that say free Mahomie, free such and such. They're not gonna do that. Unless that person was like fighting for the people, was a freedom fighter, right? They're not gonna be doing that. If this person is in prison for armed robbery or murder or anything heinous, a real crime that they did, people aren't going to be calling for their freedom and wearing t-shirts and, acting like they didn't do anything wrong. They're not going to do that. But for us, it's been made acceptable because an image has been created of who we are and it's been spoon-fed to us. And a lot of us have accepted it. And so in order to undo that, the prophet had to give us a new program to get us out of this program that's keeping us stuck in the lower self. So he's teaching us to be ourselves, right? And one thing just to reiterate on what teaching us to be ourselves is, a good example would be in Moorish literature. It's kind of long, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just when the prophet is speaking about who the Moors are, the past glory, why you should, here we go, the industrious acts of the Moslems. So remember this too, Muslims, more interchangeable, okay? So don't get it twisted. We practice Islam. But coming into this, like I said, I would advise people to go and read this. It's in your Moorish literature, the industrious acts of the Muslims. The industrious acts of the Muslims of what? Northwest and Southwest Africa. You know, just for the sake of keeping it simple, let's say he's just talking about Northwest and Southwest Africa over there, not talking about over here and all that, right? So he speaks on, he gives you some examples of the kingdoms and the beauties of the Alhambra. If you Google the Alhambra, if you never heard of that, it's still here. It's still kept up today. It's a palace in Spain because the Moors ruled Spain for almost 800 years, and it's immaculate, right? And he just gives you an idea of the history of who we are, what our ancestors have created, so that we know that we have some work to do, right? We have to step our game up. Okay, and so that's why it says, how did the prophet begin to uplift Moorish Americans? By teaching them to be themselves. So this is who we are. That's why the industrious acts of the Muslims is in there, because that's who we are. And if our ancestors were that, we are who our ancestors were without doubt or contradiction. They can do it, we can do it. We can do even better. And it's time to come back into ourselves. So we're not anti-African or anything like that, right? So what is our religion? Islamism. When you put that ism on the end of words, one definition for ism is study or practice of. So one way of saying that, the study or practice of Islam. So we're not separating ourselves from the greater Islamic world in that aspect. Okay. And look at the wording of the question. What is our religion? Religion means to tie back or to fasten. Right? When you look at the Latin prefix re, that means back or again. That means to tie back, to fasten back. So religion, that's literally meaning to tie back or to bind back to the original source, which is God, Allah. So ours is Islam. And then Islam, that means the complete submission to the will of Allah, to surrender to the will of Allah. And so there's nothing negative about that, submitting to the will of Allah. We're given a little more context on that in our Quran, the will of Allah. We understand that we have a personal connection to Allah, each and every one of us. You don't have to go through me. I don't have to go through you. We don't have to go through anybody. We don't have to go through the Pope, any of that, because Allah is in you. That's also in our questions, right? The nearest place you can meet Allah is where? It's in the heart. Okay, so if this is the submission, the surrender to the will of Allah, you know that Allah in man is the spirit man, it's the higher self. That means you're now submitting to the higher self. And we have to do that because the carnal mind, the flesh, has become strong. Many times we're not even thinking from that aspect of us, from the higher self. So yeah, we must submit to it. And then eventually, guess what? When we're obedient, when we're good Muslims, you can say Muslim. It's not a bad word. Muslim. Look, when we're good, when we're obedient, eventually the lower self now submits to the higher self. And so in many ways, that's the end goal, to eventually to have things back in order, where the lower self is now taking directions from the higher self. For those of us who have pets like dogs, if you if you're doing a good job, your dog is looking at you all the time to see his next command. Right? It's not like you walk away from the table and the dog's gonna go eat your food. Some people's like that. The dog will come and get food off of their own table, like no respect. That's not the natural order. So the dog, you can have raw meat just sitting right there, and it's for the dog. He knows it's for him. Everybody knows it's for him, and he will just sit there. You could even put it on the floor, and he will sit there and won't even go touch it until you tell him to. That's the natural order. That's how it's supposed to be. So you know, using that example, because the dog is an extension of yourself. And so the lower self should be the same way. It should be obedient. It should be taking orders from us, but we should be in our higher self. We should raise our thoughts, our vibration up to our higher self. So that's what the submitting of Islam is. Ultimately, I don't think a lot of people understand that. It's ultimately raising our thoughts, our deeds, our actions, our desires, raising them up to that level, to that vibration, so that we're actually thinking and acting from the higher self. And when we're doing that, this carnal mind, all that, it becomes obedient. No more problems. Murder, theft, robbery, everything that harms, all that stuff is over with. Right? So the body, the carnal body, is supposed to be like that dog, just looking at you. Because like they're always looking at you to see which way to go. You have to give them the order if things are proper. And anybody seen the dog whisperer with Caesar? He's coming in and he's doing the same thing. He's teaching the people how to subdue the lower self. Basically, he's always coming in and working on the people, not the dog, to correct the behavior, because there's always something the people are doing wrong. And it's the same way with us at a personal level with the lower self. So it's supposed to be obedient. And so that's, you know, might seem like a monumental task right now, but it's doable. That's what the whole lessons of Jesus' life were about, showing that it could be done. That's why it's so important. This is another thing that gets missed in the church, not knocking Christianity or any other religion, but this is something that gets lost in the translation, showing that it's not that Jesus was some unique person and that he was God's son and the rest of us aren't. No, right? That wasn't what it was about at all. He's showing you, hey, I did it and you can do it because you're all God's children. Okay? And so that is the old time religion, getting back to the root, erasing all the confusion, right? We're not holding up this person. We're not even, you know, we pay honor to our prophet, but we're not holding him up like we worship him like he's the son of God and we aren't, right? We're taking away all the confusion and getting back to the root. So we know that Allah is within us. The nearest place you can meet Allah is in your heart. And now we have an example and tools on how to align with that aspect of ourselves so that we can be successful here and in the next realm. Because eventually we're all going to leave this physical world. Okay, and back to the physical. No, question 19. What kind of flag is the Moorish? It is a red flag with a 5-pointed green star in the center. So this is getting us back to earth, okay? We have the Moorish flag. We have our own flag, right? Morocco has this similar flag as well, right? But if you look at the time frame of what was going on here, when the prophet unveiled this to us in the 1920s, Morocco, it's not that they didn't have that flag or that they never flew it. It's just that at that point in time, they couldn't fly that. They were still under occupation by either France or Spain or both countries. And things were broken up. They had to fly a different variation of it. So at that point in time, we were the only ones with that flag. And that's pretty powerful. And nobody can take that from us because it's documented in history. All right. And then ultimately, right, we have to get it together. This is for us right here in the United States of America, but ultimately, it's pretty much the whole Western Hemisphere. Haiti, Jamaica, everywhere you have these people of African descent, right? Barbados, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Haiti, the same thing, same island, same dark-skinned people, just they're divided and speak different languages. So all pretty much throughout Central Belize is below Mexico, but you see the people from Belize, they look just like the people from Jamaica. A lot of people don't even know that. So our people are all throughout North, South, and Central America. And guess what? We all can unify under this. So it's a great unifier. And that's also why this isn't taught. That's why the prophet's not taught, why all of this is suppressed. Because ultimately, as the prophet said, this is the only, right, the sole source of salvation for us. This is it. This is the great unifier. We can have our own banks, everything is powerful. And this gets us right spiritually and physically, which takes care of our problems. Can you imagine how powerful we will be if our lower self is just as obedient as your dog should be? Hopefully everybody's dog listens to them, right? Because that's how it's supposed to be. They're not supposed to be running amok, right? That would be terrible. Some of the stuff with Caesar, they have people who are on the couch, and when their dog gets on the couch and starts growling at them, they have to get up and go. And it's their dog. But that's how it is when the lower self is running things, right? He got a little chihuahua that's like got everybody all shook because he's biting people. It shouldn't be like that. So it's supposed to be obedient, all right? And that's just an external out picture of what's going on within us. What do the 5 points represent? Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We know that these are the highest principles known to man. We also know that we have a reminder every day. If we have our flag, everyone should have a flag, even if it's just a little Moorish flag or a little button. So everybody should have that. So you have that reminder every day, because these divine principles are what we're supposed to govern our thoughts, deeds, and actions by. Always, even when it's not easy. And this stuff doesn't change, it's everlasting. And it's actually universal. And on that note, I'm gonna go ahead and open the floor up to questions. If anybody has anything they'd like to add or ask, or even if it's not in relation to these questions, feel free to speak. Islam, I yield the floor.
Peace. There's also a group of islands called the Turks and Caicos in the Caribbean as well.
Islam, that's right. Islam. I believe also they have a flower there that's called, it might be called like the tarbouche or something, because it looks like it has like a red top. And so they say like it resembles a fez. I'm gonna see if I could pull that up real quick, but yeah. And that's in the Turks and Caicos, however you pronounce that. Islam, brother, gratitude. All right, Islam, does anybody else have anything they'd like to share or anything they would like to speak on? This is that flower I was talking about. That's found in Turks and Caicos. I think this is the only place that is found. It's called the Turk's Head cacti. See that? Okay, Islam. So if there's no more questions, I want to announce without further ado, we're going to go into the closing of the meeting. Okay, all meetings are to be open and closed promptly according to the Circle 7 in love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Everyone who is able to, please rise and face the east for the closing prayer. We stand straight with our heels together. So your feet are at a 45-degree angle, and then hold our arms up perpendicular with 2 fingers on the right and 5 on the left. You do not need to repeat after me. Allah, bind our hearts and minds back to our ancient forefathers, divine creed and principles. We ask this in thy holy name and the 7 Elohim. Amen. Islam, Islam, Islamism. Peace and love, Moors. This meeting is now adjourned.
Peace and love.
Peace and love, Moslem.
Peace and love.